All right, so here's part two of my epilepsy journey video, and I don't remember what I titled the last one, but here it is. And I really want to talk about a story I left out, which is an accident that I got into in January of 2022. But before I tell you that story, I did kind of want to talk about the driving aspect altogether, because I have lost my license three times. And I don't want it to seem like I am someone who just continuously gets behind the wheel despite having epilepsy. If I'm not okay to drive, I'm not okay to drive. And I think anyone who knows that they have epilepsy and anyone knows that they're having seizures should not take the risk of getting behind the wheel. Um, so, if you know your epilepsy isn't under control, don't take the risk. I mean, it's not worth it. If you know that the medication you're on isn't working or you need treatment again, definitely get help. And I feel like in my last video, I didn't really talk about that. I kind of just skimmed over, my driving history a little bit. But yeah, I did want to address that a little further. An interesting side story on the driving aspect is that, I remember when I went in for my VNS, like, like evaluation 2 weeks before the actual operation, and the basically RN who was going over my medical history, and I told him about my accidents and everything, and he stopped me and he goes, "Wait," he goes, "So you've had two accidents?" Or he goes, "Or you've had epilepsy for how long?" And I told him, and he goes, "And you're still driving?" I said, "No," I said, "I'm not driving." I said, "I haven't had my license for, at that point, I think it had been like 9 months, or no, it had been 11 months at that point." And he goes, "Okay," he goes, "I just want to make sure." And he told me that he had worked at a hospital in an ER, and this guy came in with, had been having seizures or whatever, and the guy had driven himself there and told him everything that had been going on, and it somehow came up that he was driving himself around, and he goes, "Wait, you're driving yourself? You drove yourself here. You drove yourself everywhere that you're going?" And he said, "Well," he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You can't do that." He goes, "I have to call the cops right now." He goes, "And they're gonna take your license." He goes, "You can't leave here and continue to drive." And that's exactly what he did. So he called the police. They came, they took his license, and they actually arrested him. They waited for him to get his treatment, and then they arrested him and took him to jail. So it's not something to play around with. It's not something that you should take, lightheartedly. If you know that you have epilepsy and you're not doing anything about it and you think that you're safe, you're not. Because if you get in an accident, you're looking at jail time. If you get in an accident and you kill somebody or hurt somebody, you could go to prison if you know you have epilepsy, or if you don't have a license and, something happens like that. So I just want to talk about that for a second. But anyways, let me get into this story that I left out. So in January of 2022, which is last year, I was driving through this like little valley. I mean, that's really what I can call it. It's basically between this small section of hills, and it's 2-lane road, and the speed limit's pretty high. I think it's probably about 60 going through there, because there's really nothing around at all. But the whole way through, there's guardrails, protecting the cars from flying off, because on both sides, whether you're going north or south, it's just a drop off. And so you're kind of, if you get in an accident, I mean, you're pretty much okay. There's only one section where there's no guardrails, and it's because there's a sign coming up that says there's a signal ahead, and that signal has it's there because there's a side road that takes you off to a dump, apparently. And of course, I had a seizure right where there isn't that guardrail. So I flew off. I took that sign out. I ran into it and flew off the side of that cliff or the ridge, whatever you want to call it, and ended up down in the ditch. Now, the last thing I remember was I was coming around this bend and I saw the sign, I saw the signal lights ahead. And the sign was just like a wooden post and it had just the standard, like that. It had the three, lights on it, indicating the signal ahead. I didn't think anything of it. And the next thing I knew, I'm sitting, down in the dirt. Um, and I remember when I woke up, I'm like really disoriented and I'm kind of thinking, I remember initially thinking I'm in a parking lot and I'm thinking, like, I thought, oh man, I must have fallen asleep in my car or something. I thought I had taken a nap or something and, like that had happened. I didn't realize I had a seizure. And I'm thinking, man, I need to start my car and get going to, the place I was supposed to be headed. And I'm trying to start my car and I'm realizing, wait, my car is started. It's just dead. Nothing's happening. And I'm looking around and I realize I'm not in a parking lot. I'm like, where am I? It's all bushes around me. And I look in my side view mirror and I see this guy getting out of his car. And I mean, this guy's not in the best shape. And he's about to kill himself trying to run down this, this drop off. And I get out of the car to try to tell him like it's okay, because I wasn't hurt. Initially I did, a self-assessment like, am I injured? Am I all right? And I was fine. I don't remember it, but because I had had a seizure and my body was apparently limp, I was all right. The car was a mess. The car was totaled, but I was okay. So I hop out. I tell the guy like, "Hey, I'm okay. It's all right." And he's freaked out. He's like yelling and he's like, "You're sure you're all right?" He goes, "We called 911 and he goes, they're on their way and everything else." He goes, "You scared us." And he goes, "My buddy's up in the car." He goes, "We saw you fly off." He goes, and he didn't tell me I took the sign out. I didn't know I actually took the sign out until I got back up to the top. Um, but anyways, yeah, I mean, he was kind of losing it for a little while there. I mean, he didn't believe me when I told him I was okay. I told him what happened. I said, I had a seizure. I said, I didn't realize it until, I saw you running down the hill and I kind of evaluated what was going on. But I said, I have epilepsy, I said, but I've been good for a while. So I said, I'm on medication. I said, and I haven't had anything like this. Uh, yeah, it had been like, I'm trying to think, it had been probably about a year and a half, roughly, I think. So, I had been good up until that point. And, yeah, I told him, I said, yeah, I said, I had a seizure, I guess. And next thing I knew, I was down here. I said, I don't remember anything. And he went ahead and he was like, all right. He goes, if you're okay, he goes, I'm going to go ahead and head back up. I said, yeah. I said, I'll just wait down here. I said, that's all I can do. I got to wait with the car. He said, 911's on their way. I go, yeah, I'm going to have to call a tow truck. I said, to figure out how to get this car out of here. But of course, 911 came, the police, the ambulance. The police were the first ones to get there. And he initially told them, when I told him that I was okay, and he kind of looked at me and saw I was okay, he told them, you guys don't need to bother coming down. He said, you guys are, told the ambulance you guys are free to go. The fire truck did come down, the paramedics that were on the rig, but they kind of even knew. They were like, yeah, you're okay. I told them what happened. And I said, I know. I said, I've been through this before. I said, so I know how it feels after the fact, but it, it is kind of what it is. It's unfortunate. And I called my boss. I had to tell her, of course. And I kind of knew in that moment, my job was kind of wrecked because my job requires me to drive. It did. I obviously don't do that anymore. I haven't since. So that was April 2020. I mean, that was January 2022, and now we're in June of 2023. So yeah, I work from home now, but yeah, I knew everything was pretty much over at that point, and I knew that my license was gone again, and I knew that this was the third time, and I kind of did like a kind of self-reflection on I'm not gonna pursue this again. You know, I'm not gonna go after getting my license. You know, if I go a really long time without having a seizure and the doctors bring it to me and say, you know, it's, you know, how do you feel about driving? Then maybe I'll go ahead and look into it again. But at this point, I'm not going to go actively out of my way to try to get my license back, because it's just, I realize the harm I'm putting others at the harm I'm putting others in, and the harm I'm putting myself in, because no amount of time is really gonna be enough at this point. I mean, I went a year and a half without having a major issue, and I, you know, it can come out of nowhere. So medication wasn't enough. So, and that's ultimately actually what led me to get the VNS. Actually, I forgot to include that in the last video, but yeah, so that's pretty much what happened. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to touch on that. Eventually, they did get my car out. It took 2 tow trucks to pull it up out of that drop off, but yeah, it took forever. I was crazy far from home. It was like rush hour too. I had to wait for my parents to come pick me up, so it was there was that, and then I had to go back out there the next day. I had to have someone from work come pick me up because the car was a mess. I mean, I had a ton of stuff in the car that had been flying around from going down the hill, or going down into the, whatever you want to call it. And I don't know what to call it, honestly. I don't even know what to classify it as, because it's not like a complete just drop down. It's like there's a slight angle, but it's not a hill. I mean, it's steep. And I mean, I had a real hard time getting out of there. I almost couldn't do it by myself. So yeah, it was a mess. But yeah, that was pretty much it though. No injuries, luckily. And I mean, everyone was pretty understanding. My job was able to keep me on. I'm still with the same company, so I just got moved to a different department. So yeah, but I did want to make that part 2 for you, just because that's one huge piece of my story that I did leave out, that I just forgot. I couldn't remember. So yeah, I think that's kind of it for the most part. Since my last video, which was 2 weeks ago, I know I'm a little late getting this one posted. Nothing's really changed a whole lot. My seizure activity has been pretty much the same. I've had a positive, pretty positive, you know, a pretty positive, what's the word? Trend in my seizures this last couple weeks. So, you know, we'll see where it goes. But yeah, that's about it. So anyways, that's it.